The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, Concordant Body, Appendant Body, Masonic Authority, or CraftsmenOnline.com.
Welcome back to the Craftsmen Online Podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce, and we have kicked off our countdown of the most listened to Craftsmen Online Podcast episodes of 2025. Now, if you're new, here's how it works. Our listeners, you do your thing, downloading, listening our weekly episodes. iHeartRadio, they do their thing. They put together and compile all the data from 52 weeks. Yeah, 52 weeks in a year. That's how long our season is. 52 weeks worth of guests. Wow, that's a lot of numbers. We stack up our 10 most listened to episodes of the year, and you and I, we go all the way to the top. Number 1. We get to enjoy the greatest hits as we count down our way to that top spot and find out who's going to hold the honor of being the most listened to guest of 2025. You ready to find out? Let's get back to it. I have said the word first a record number of times on the 2025 countdown, and we get to say it again here. Our 5th most listened to episode features 2 firsts. 1, this is Right Worshipful Kanjin Setterman's first appearance on our list, and secondly, and most importantly, he is the first Buddhist Grand Chaplain of the Grand Lodge of New York. We actually got to break that news to him during the recording of this episode, so maybe a bonus first. Right Worshipful Brother Kanjin became a Buddhist monk at the age of 18, and on this episode, he answered the question that, Buddhists can become a Freemason, while also exploring how the 4 Noble Truths connect with the principal tenets of Freemasonry.
Number 5.
I grew up with Masonry. I particularly remember all the shrine events because my dad was that as well. He owned he was a wine distributor, and also he was a professional wine taster. Moving back, I was very pleasantly surprised with the mentality. I grew up, even though it says North Tonawanda, it's actually Niagara Wheatfield, which is a very small town. You had to be a very strong individual with someone that, especially to take on a new tradition or be part of that tradition or religion amongst people who had no idea of what that meant. One funny joke, my mother, when I wanted to become a monk, her only request to me was that she would never see me in an airport handing out flowers. I had to say to of course, her only point of understanding Eastern philosophy, of course, was Hare Krishna, right? Well,
Yes.
so I didn't bother to explain that to her. I just said that was absolutely one promise I could keep. So
Good boy. Nice.
So, one question is, why do we have that need for deity? And what does it mean? Like, what is the point of that, that we require it within Masonry? Because when we make an obligation towards each other, towards the mentality, the precepts that we follow, what do we base that on? I think that's one of the main important aspects that we have to think about. That we're not just doing it on our own honor, we're doing it on a system of belief in something good and something, as they said, even in the point of being eternal, right? So there's a few differences possibly that would be confusing for people. And that's one reason why I wanted to do this interview, was because I went online and I saw lots of Buddhists asking, well, can I be a Freemason? And it was interesting because first of all, the amount of misunderstanding all over, because even in Japan, people are terrified about Freemasons.
Why is that?
Well, because they don't know. We've done such a great job keeping ourselves a secret that everyone has made up what they think. A perfect example, there was a Buddhist temple, the tsunami that they had that destroyed many places. Actually, the Grand Lodge of Japan rebuilt a Buddhist temple in northern Japan where it actually happened. They gave the donation, everything. And the Buddhists were just so confused by that because they had no idea. And actually, there was a kind of negative connotation with Masons because they just assume what everyone else assumes. You read, online.
Do you think it's a bit of like the Eastern versus Western traditions?
No, I don't think so. I just think it's that we didn't make the effort to make ourselves available. So therefore, people would like to, of course, what they don't understand, they usually fear, and rightfully so. Part of your question was that the specifics in Buddhism that allow this concept. One interesting point was, so first of all, the idea of creator. Buddhism does have a creator because in the East, Brahma is the creator of the world. However, he is not the top of the pinnacle of the practice of the teaching. He is seen as a state, a very high state, but yet not the most enlightened being. Okay, so that's something totally different for Western, I would imagine. But I don't think that that's where this question sits. This question sits in that what represents that belief or that essence that we can take that vow upon, that obligation upon, and what is directing our life. As you said, there's very specific traditions that would not be necessarily compatible with an outlook of, a Freemason outlook. So one of the things they had said is that some people believe the Dharma. Dharma means teaching in Indian, the Sanskrit word. In the East, the Dharma, the teaching itself, is seen as enlightenment, and that's represented in our daily lives. And that the Buddha himself, this is also a common mistake that people think, that people believe Buddha is our God. So they automatically supplement the Buddha with God. There are some traditions that see Buddha as the center of the teaching, right? As a kind of divine being. So the Buddha see it as divine, but yet also as a human. But the state of Buddha, which there's two connotations which can be mixed up, Buddha also means the highest consciousness, which could mean God, as enlightenment, that each of us have that within ourselves. So the basic premise of Buddhism is to realize that nature in ourselves, to connect with that nature. There was a great book by Thich Nhat Hanh that called it Buddha Nature, Christ Nature. The interesting thing is, it's such a different understanding in the East that some people would very much easily misunderstand by thinking as a Godhead, that the Buddha himself as a human being is top of. However, the Buddha represents that divine nature, just as I would say Jesus represents the entity of God or Christian, right? And to be honest, as a Freemason, I always find more, and I think this is where the majority of people, they talk about this in being a chaplain specifically, that our level of spirituality becomes that we understand the basic underlying premise that I believe Freemasonry is built on, that we can see in every tradition, right? That it holds those same goals of goodness and enlightenment and compassion.
So as host of the Craftsmen Online Podcast, I feel like I can create a special award for our next guest, and I so do. To say that Metal Drew is the most metal guest is definitely an understatement. I mean, listen, he gets his own theme music. When he's not attending Olive Branch Lodge number 16 in Freehold, New Jersey, they meet on the second and fourth Tuesday, by the way, Drew's a big presence on social media, constantly sharing videos on TikTok and Instagram, fighting those online trolls and spreading Masonic light. Yeah, he's one busy guy, and ironically, the topic that made our countdown didn't feature his knowledge of metal music, like this, as we discuss the wages of a Master Mason, which are corn, wine, and oil. For our fourth most listened to episode in 2025, Worshipful Brother Metal Drew and I get past the physical representation of the wages of a traveling man and discuss how to carry corn, wine, and oil as we're rocking everyday life.
Number 4.
And that's the beauty of Masonry in general, is that we are, number one, taught to think in ways like this. We are taught to ascribe to, yes, there is the literal sense, which I myself am that kind of Mason. I like finding the literal things. I discussed this when we had our episode on the heavy metal album covers. I like looking at the literal things and where they came from. But no, that's my thing. And I know that there are brothers out there that are more esoterically minded than myself, not just you, but even some of my own lodge brothers that will take it to that aspect of, well, corn's not just corn. Corn is also the thing that made the body of Christ. I'm using big air quotes here. This is not literal. This is just me. We come to an agreement that there are multiple concepts when it comes to the lessons taught within the different degrees. I want to bring it back to, like I said, I'm going to lean heavily on the Square magazine. Corn was always regarded as an element of national wealth. It formed part of the tribute brought to Hezekiah on the restoration of priesthood, and bread was one of the signs of welcome and goodwill to Abraham. Wine, in a metaphorical sense, represents the essence of goodness. Jerusalem, Israel, the Messiah, the righteous, etc., are all compared to wine. Whereas wine that has been aged into vinegar is compared to wickedness and the souring of wine. So, like I said in the beginning, wine as itself is a thing of opulence, is a thing of beauty and good taste and things like that. But it can become soured. It can become bad and quote unquote wicked. His longest definition, which I'm not going to bore you with, is the one on oil. And because it's got so many different uses, is it olive oil? Is it beaten oil that they used to use on the tabernacle? Is it one of the metaphors where it says they dip his foot in oil when referring to the original Hebrew? Anything that, like, when they say things about the feet, it means like the bottom half of them are naked. Like they're either using the bathroom or they're performing some kind of act down there. So there could be multiple construed stories with that. Just in, like, oil is a broad term. What kind of oil was it? Are we going back to Psalm 133? It ran down the beard. Well, that's an anointing oil. That is a sacred oil that one would use to ritually purify themselves. Are you getting that as part of your payment, or are you getting sustenance oil to go with your bread and your wine?
As you were talking, I was writing down food equals wealth, wine equals joy, or happiness. And, you can go overboard. Too much happiness can actually, as you kind of mentioned, lead to some dark times.
Oh, yes. Hold on. I got my whiskey bottles behind me.
Hey, we got to take a little break to pay some bills, but don't worry. On the other side of these messages is the third most listened to episode of 2025 as our countdown rolls on. And we're back, ready to jump into the top 3. Yeah, this is where the numbers get smaller, but as they say, the hits get bigger. On our countdown of the most listened to podcast episodes of 2025. For our third most listened to episode of the year, we're heading to the western coast of Canada in British Columbia. That's where we find worshipful brother Will Rothery. Brother Will had a great idea for a 3-part series this season titled Now What?, where we answered common questions brothers asked after being raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason. This was a pretty popular series, eh? And that's Canadian for right, or, as we say here in America, as 2 of the 3 episodes landed in our top 20 this year. So we took the score of both and put them together, and that's what's taking the 3rd spot in our countdown. Our discussion on the first steps a Master Mason should take after they receive their 3rd degree.
Number 3.
Most Masons' views change in the perspective of you think that you're going through, you get the EA, you get the Fellowcraft, you're getting a grasp of what's going on here. But then you get the Master Mason degree, and it's so filled with so much knowledge and so much information, and it really just rounds out the rest of Blue Lodge for you in a way that now you can move whatever way you want. You can, if you want to join these bodies or whatever, that's totally up to you. But now you can really start to understand Masonic literature. You can really start to go back to the first 2 degrees and see what foundations they had that really built up to this Master Mason, to this new perspective that you have now, where you can go and travel freely. Again, like what you were saying with the analogy about having your own driver's license, you don't have to get tagged along to a lodge now as an EA or a Fellowcraft. You can now go and visit with other lodges and build these meaningful connections with these other brothers inside or outside of your jurisdiction. And it's just a very beautiful thing. You can now become a lodge officer. And I think I don't necessarily agree with becoming a lodge officer right after becoming a Master Mason, but just knowing in the back of your mind, there's all these different steps. There's all these different directions that you can go. And I think that's really important when you have these viewpoints and these understandings that there's so many different directions that you can go. But in the big sense, I think it really is just an eye opener when you really start to break down a lot of the knowledge and information that's in the Master Mason degree that really helps to give you this new profound perspective on Masonic understanding, and even the fact that we really touch on death in the third degree. And I won't get any further into it than that, but it's very much something that we all have to come to grips with, because it's something that's going to meet us one day altogether. And I don't think a lot of people thinking when they're going through their EA and their fellow craft that they're going to get hit so hard with such a moral lesson in the third degree that it really just hits home. And the allegory that's built into the third degree, I don't think a lot of people are really expecting that going through the EA and fellow craft. You get the idea that you're building yourself up, you're building up on building blocks here. But really, when you hit that Master Mason degree and it gives you such a rounded idea of what it is that you've really gotten yourself into, I think it really gives a great perspective when you finally reach that finish line and now you have carte blanche to basically go off on any literature that you want. You can pick up any Masonic book. You have so much more freedom now. And so I think those are good things to view now that you're a Master Mason.
I love how you put it that way, because I always tell guys in the early on stages when they're now an EA, they just got that first degree, and I meet with them and I'm like, okay, here's what I want you to do. And it's very structured. Our learning process is super structured. It starts with the memorization, the catechism. You're learning about working tools. You're learning about specific lessons that are coming through in all of the degrees. There's the dissecting of what these bigger thoughts now mean. And you're getting little, breadcrumb trails, I would say, as you're pointing out about all of this. And then you get to, as you mentioned, like, boom, I'm raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason. I witnessed the Heramic legend. If that's the real story of Freemasonry, that's interesting. Well, now what do I do? And then that's the next conversation that you got to start picking up with somebody is like, if they're still seeking that knowledge, which I hope that they are. I don't think most guys just give up on learning after they get their third degree. I just feel like we don't really have anything more for them to do, at least in the structure as it exists now. Now it's time for you to do what I call free range learning. Like, go find that topic or that subject. Like, let's go back. Was it something in the first degree? Was it in the second degree? The middle chamber, the winding staircase lecture? Was it in the third degree, a piece of the Heramic legend, or just some of the ritual or symbolism that exists in the conferral of the degree, the obligation part? Like, was there something in there that you had a question about? Because now we can actually go explore that.
There's a lot of times where we have a hard time kind of discerning from what's fiction, and we kind of just fill in the blanks to kind of make this allegorical story really resonate with what we're doing in Freemasonry, and really bringing this stone builder element to it that's really this giant metaphor about you building yourself up. One of the big reasons why we don't really explain the allegory very further, it's not even a bad idea to sit down with one of your mentors, or maybe the mentor that you had through your 3 degrees, and talk to him about these different pieces of the degree that were very educational, that we kind of just roughly go past on, and we don't really touch on that very much. And those are really the types of things that, one, as being mentors, we need to point these out to these younger Masons or Masons who are coming up, because sometimes you just kind of gloss over some of these parts of the degrees and you just think, okay, that was cool, but having a chat about it, I think, is a great way of opening those doors for you and introducing you to this whole other side of Masonry that's not quite guarded or very secretive, but it's just not something that we really talk in large lengths about in the middle of lodge. And it's really, those are the opportunities where you kind of have to go out of your way to learn a little bit more.
So it doesn't matter where you live in the world, the fact remains there are less Freemasons now, wherever you are, than almost 100 years ago. It's crazy. Our second most listened to episode this year features Brother Matthew Brockbank. And fun fact, this is Brother Matt's second consecutive year holding the runner-up spot on our countdown. Sorry to point that out, Matt. He addressed the Masonic membership problem with a modern solution. Oh yes, the most powerful working tool of all time, his cell phone. He literally did an exit interview style approach to reach out to brothers who either demitted, NPD'd, or simply stopped coming to his lodge. He then compiled all this data to provide a pathway to answer the question, why are men leaving our lodges? And what can we do to get them back?
Number 2.
I wanted to know, were there any like really bad things? Because sometimes, conflict goes unspoken. As we know, a lot of sometimes, personal crimes go unreported because of embarrassment, or they're fearful from some kind of retaliation. So I was wondering, would I hear, anything very bad? I got a range of responses, and to be honest, some of which did involve some form of conflict, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional. I don't want to, I don't want to sugarcoat anything or say that, oh, yeah, all the brothers, they demitted because, they had other things going on. They were just too busy. Well, that's not the case. We're not perfect.
That's a good point. Like, you have to be ready to embrace what we call fearless feedback. That I'm really interested, not so much to hear what their feelings are about Freemasonry just in general down the road when we're talking about Freemasonry with people that have an interest in it. How can we explain it to them so that we're more careful in kind of outlining potentially what their experience could be like?
When I brought this before the lodge, the main reaction was kind of, wow, you made us very uncomfortable, but for good reasons, right? And that kind of was, that was kind of the aim here. These are not comfortable conversations to have. This simply is very much a relationship between one or more men and, as an organization. And obviously we come from different backgrounds. We have different political, religious, or social beliefs. And, whether those come into play in the lodge or not, we are different people. So sometimes we don't always, gel or mesh with, the brothers in our lodge. I didn't really get any responses where people just straight up said, you know what, it's not for me. Everyone really wanted to be there. And for the most part, a lot of the responses I got, not all of them, but a majority of the responses that I got were very positive when it came to individual brothers. They all said something about, oh, I really like that guy, or I really like this guy, I really like this one thing. It's not like anyone said, everything was awful, all negative, blah. So I want to give people some action points, by the way. I hate just talking about things, in abstract. I like to give people actual things to do. So I want to talk about the actual reactions, because maybe other lodges are listening to this and they're thinking, oh, wow, yeah, we do that. We should change that. So for instance, St. George's, we wear white ties and tails. So we wear, a white vest, a white bow tie. We wear not just a tuxedo, but full-blown tails. It's pretty much the most dolled up you can possibly be.
Oh, I know.
And that's a tradition. Yeah. Mike knows. Yeah, right?
I remember stopping to get gas at a gas station and someone asking me, where are you going all dressed up? And I'm like, well, actually, I play piano down the street on the second and fourth Thursdays.
So we have this tradition of wearing these kind of silly penguin suits. And then I'm at a bunch of different lodges, and what are they wearing? They're wearing whatever they want, because it's not, the suit doesn't make you a Mason. The suit doesn't make you a good man. The suit, when you get to heaven, God doesn't care that you wore a suit, right? No one gives a crap about a suit. I don't know. Maybe we should re-examine that. Does it really mean as much to us as we think it does? Right? We're also, a colonial lodge. So sometimes we have a colonial day where we dress up in the colonial outfits. That's great. We do that for one day. Okay. Well, maybe we wear the tuxedos for only, I don't know, one day. Maybe we wear them to table lodge. Maybe we only wear them when we do degrees, but we have to kind of cut back a little bit and examine, is this really what members want? Or is this just something we're doing because we've done it for 250 years?
Hey, the bills don't pay themselves. After this quick break, the big reveal. Come back for the most listened to Craftsmen Online podcast of 2025. Wow, 52 2 weeks later, and here we are. The answer to who will be the number one most listened to Craftsmen Online podcast for 2025. Are you ready? Well, a little spoiler alert. We have a new guest holding the top spot this year. New as in Masonic author, worshipful brother Nathan St. Pierre. Now, he narrowly missed the 2024 countdown, but firmly made his presence this year. In April, Brother Nathan joined me to tackle a question that has been burning on my mind, and I'm guessing in the minds of most Freemasons for years. Who are Preston Webb, and how did their ritual become the standard for most Freemasons in North America? His answer claims the most listened to Craftsmen Online podcast title for 2025.
Number 1.
So I'm left with kind of two questions after everything that we've talked about in this episode. I'll start with the first one. I mean, after hearing Preston, who had these great lectures and just kept writing and writing and writing and writing, it was like, hey, you know what? I've got more. Let's talk about more. And then you have Webb that's like, oh, these were great, and I'm going to put this in a book, but I need to, kind of chop things up here a little bit and make it fit, and boom, boom, boom. So then that's how we literally get the Preston and Webb ritual. It's not like they worked together.
They did not.
And
they didn't
corresponded. Yeah, that's it.
They didn't know each other. Yeah,
those romantic ideas of one influencing the other, and somebody. So, not the case here. What's stopping modern men today in the craft from saying, hey, you know what? I would like to write or rewrite or contribute or tweak our ritual and make it this way now instead of what we now know?
Permit no innovation in the body of masonry. That's an old charge. So it really comes down to a philosophy. What is Freemasonry? Is Freemasonry going to a building and doing a meeting and reading minutes? Is Freemasonry participating in a degree one time on one night, wearing a ring on your finger for the rest of your life and never going back? What is a Freemason, right? So like if you define it by the number of degrees that you collect, you're doing homage to a sort of Thomas Smith Webb system. But if it's like the perpetual seek of knowledge, that's Prestonian. Like that's, so I see them as what is your North Star? Like rather than, because Preston was collecting old charges, old rituals, old things. So a lot of stuff that he was writing, he's quoting Charles Leslie from 1741. He's quoting other stuff, and he's putting it in there because he's trying to compile as much of the old, like back when we actually believed that we had antediluvian knowledge that we needed to perpetuate. Back when we gave a damn. That's what he was trying to bring back. Now, to steel man Thomas Smith Webb, I don't think he was completely a charlatan. I think instead it was, wow, masonry over here is not quite what it could be. I found these really great lectures from England. What if we did these? Like, I don't ascribe necessarily ill faith to our dear brother Webb. In fact, the opposite. Like what he did, especially if you're a Royal Archmason, what he did for the York Rite in America was unparalleled. Like, and the fact that that it's known elsewhere as the American Rite is such a testament to him and what he did. Right. I don't want to diminish Thomas Smith Webb at all, especially given that he had such a short life.
And for our listener, it's like, Nathan and I have had a lot of fun about this particular topic and in this episode because ritual can be dry and history sometimes can be boring. And I've appreciated the tone that you've taken. And as a proud New York Freemason, I would never speak poorly of Thomas Webb because I know the wonderful contributions. I know our Grand Lodge in New York says we're the one that follows things as close to what the ritual is supposed to be. And I know that kind of leads into my second question, where each grand jurisdiction makes those claims that we are the one that's most aligned to this or that.
I hate to break it to you, but every single one of your grand jurisdictions has changed something. So this idea that the rituals have gone continuously like unimpaired is very silly, and that's the honest answer to the question about like why is this so different? Well, because someone changed it. That's the answer. Like, and it's and that's fine, right? Another misconception is that Webb introduced the all-seeing eye, that this is a later symbol and is not ancient, and that's actually not true. So he's credited with adding things like that because in the 1802 he adds pieces of those emblematic work. But these are old symbols that he was adding in as he became aware of the lectures. Another misconception is that the monitor contains secret rituals. I wanted to talk about this because you were talking about it earlier. Like sometimes I get confused. It's the cipher? It's the monitor? Whatever. So these are actually two different books. So remember, I had mentioned earlier that he was selling his book, but then it was like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like buy this book, but don't really because I'm not supposed to let you buy an exposure or whatever. But right. So the idea was the exposure was what we would consider the ciphered portions or the esoteric work. And then the monitor was the exoteric work. And this is why plain text portions of your ritual are referred to as monitorial, because it comes from a monitor. So, those are two separate documents.
I love when you come on. I learn so much from you, and I really appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge, especially on Masonic ritual. I feel that I didn't really start, quote unquote, bonding with ritual, not when I had to memorize it to learn it to go through the degrees, but when I actually got to sit back as a Master Mason and start learning it and really getting into it. The parts that appeal the most to me are the lectures that come after the conferral of the degree, let's say.
Sure.
Is there a part of the ritual that is memorable or meaningful for you where you can say, you know what, this is kind of the best blend of Preston and Webb's works and words and wisdom together that can be found in our ritual?
Yes. So I'll give you one from each, right? So so here's Preston, and it's not from a lecture, and I'll bet you'll love it. But may the blessings of heaven rest on us and all regular Masons. May brotherly love prevail, every moral and social virtue cement us. Amen. That's Preston. And for Webb, this one it's a personal story. So when I was memorizing the lectures, sometimes my wife would have difficulty sleeping at night, and then she'd go, "Tell me a story." And then I would always start with the part that I knew that was plain text. This famous fabric was situated on Mount Moriah, near the place where Abraham was about to offer up his son Isaac. And I would just start going with a monitorial part of the third degree, and then pretty soon she would. And it was always the same story, no matter what. Like anytime she'd say, like, "Tell me a story," it was always this famous fabric was situated on. So I secretly like to think she got insomnia so that way she could listen to my lectures all the time.
And that is a wrap. Congratulations to all of our top 10 guests this year. And thank you to all of our guests who have joined me throughout the 52-week season. Man, season number 5 would not be able to do this without you. And again, biggest thanks goes to our listener. I mean, otherwise it's just me and a guest on camera and microphone talking to each other. Your support and listening every week, there's a reason why we've gotten up to 140,000 downloads. You've helped us out so much by sharing a review on your podcast player or making a difference and subscribing and contributing to the show through Patreon. Man, I really appreciate you. Lots of love. A quick reminder, speaking of Patreon, if you haven't done so already, you can open up your podcast player, click on the Craftsmen Online Podcast in the notes right there, boom. You'll see the link to subscribe or try our free 7-day trial on Patreon. You get ad-free episodes, and you can browse all of the subscriber extra content with some of the guests you've heard on this year's countdown. I love the beginning of a new year. We are going to be kicking off season number 6 with a bang next Monday, as we welcome in 2026 with, well, what will potentially be its first most controversial episode, Messoterica, why Esoteric Study is a waste of time. We'll be tackling that with my guest, Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington, on Monday. Until next time, this is Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. I've sincerely enjoyed our time together and cannot wait to start a new year. Let peace and harmony prevail.